The bell above the door of Gideon's horology didn't ring. It sighed. It was a tired sound, much like the man who stood behind the counter. Elias Thorne was 32, but his soul felt much older, perhaps because he spent his days surrounded by the heartbeat of the past. He was a horologist, a clockmaker, in a world that had largely forgotten the beauty of gears and springs in favor of digital silence. His shop, tucked away in a cobblestone alley of the city's old quarter, smelled of cedarwood, brass polish, and time itself. It was raining that Tuesday, a relentless, gray drizzle that made the gas lamps flicker early. Elias was working on a grandfather clock from the 1880s, a monstrosity of mahogany and regret. The owner, a wealthy estate lawyer, had claimed it hadn't chimed since the day his great-aunt died. Elias adjusted his loop, magnifying his vision until the world was nothing but toothed wheels and hairsprings. He carefully removed the face of the clock. As he slid the brass plate aside, something fluttered out. It wasn't a spring. It was paper, folded into a tight square, yellowed with age, and smelling faintly of dried lavender. Elias hesitated. Clockmakers were like doctors. They had a code of confidentiality, but the paper had fallen onto his workbench, unfolding slightly like a waking flower. He picked it up with his tweezers. The ink was faded, sepia-toned, written in a hurried, elegant script. To the one who fixes this heart, I broke it on purpose. I could not bear to hear it count the seconds until he leaves for the war. If time stops, perhaps he will stay. If you are reading this, the war is over. Tell me, did the world survive? Did love? E.V., October 1916. Elias stared at the note. A chill, entirely separate from the drafty shop, walked up his spine. 1916. A woman had sabotaged a clock to stop time, a desperate, magical act of grief. He turned the paper over. There was nothing else, just the silence of a century. Most people would have put the note back or thrown it away. But Elias was a man who fixed broken things. He felt a sudden, inexplicable burden. He needed to know if Evie ever got her answer. The search began at the public library, a cathedral of silence that Elias visited often. He wasn't looking for the clock's owner. He knew who that was. He was looking for Evie. He spent 3 evenings scrolling through microfiche, scanning census records from 1916 for the address where the clock had originally stood. The records were a labyrinth of ink, but finally, he found it. The Vane estate daughter, Eleanor Vane. Found something interesting? The voice startled him. Elias looked up to see a woman standing at the end of the aisle. She was holding a stack of books that looked heavy enough to crush a small car. She had messy auburn hair tied back with a pencil, and her eyes were the color of rain-washed slate. Yes, Elias stammered, covering the printout. Just researching a client's heirloom. She raised an eyebrow, shifting the books to her hip. I'm Sarah. I run the archives here. You've been staring at the 1916 census for 4 hours. Either you're a very dedicated historian, or you're looking for a ghost. Elias looked at her. There was a sharpness to her, a clarity that cut through the dusty atmosphere of the library. On an impulse he couldn't explain, he slid the photocopy across the table. I found a note inside a clock, he said. Sarah set the books down. She read the copy of the note. Her expression changed from amused curiosity to something softer, more guarded. She traced the signature with her finger. She broke time to save him, Sarah whispered. She looked up at Elias. That's beautiful. And tragic. I want to know what happened to her, Elias said. Did he come back? Sarah sat down opposite him. The air between them shifted, charged with the sudden intimacy of a shared mystery. The Vane family archives are in the basement. They aren't digitized yet. If you want to find out, you're going to need a guide. Elias smiled, a rare expression that reached his eyes. Lead the way. Over the next 2 weeks, Elias and Sarah became a fixture in the basement of the library. It was a dusty, windowless world, but to Elias, it became the brightest part of his day. They sifted through letters, diaries, and property deeds. They learned that Eleanor Vane was a spirited young woman who loved poetry and hated tea. The man she loved was named Arthur, a lieutenant in the infantry. As they pieced together Eleanor's story, Elias and Sarah began to weave their own. They ordered takeout greasy, Thai food that tasted like heaven and ate it sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes of history. They argued about music. Elias liked classical, Sarah liked indie rock. They laughed about the absurdity of their lives, him fixing seconds, her cataloging centuries. One rainy Thursday, they found a box of letters returned from the front. "Here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. She handed a bundle to Elias. Letters from Arthur to Eleanor. Elias carefully undid the twine. He read the last letter, dated November 1918. "My dearest Elle, the guns have stopped. The silence is terrifying. I am coming home. I don't care about the time lost. I only care about the time remaining. Set the clocks running again." He survived, Elias breathed out, relief washing over him. "Keep reading," Sarah said quietly. Elias turned to the next document. It was a telegram, dated 2 days after the letter. "Regret to inform you, influenza. Died in transit." The silence in the basement was heavy, suffocating. Arthur had survived the war only to die on the way home. Eleanor had broken the clock for nothing. Elias looked at Sarah. She was crying, silent tears tracking through the dust on her cheeks. "It's not fair," she whispered. She waited. She stopped time for him. Elias reached out, his hand hovering before gently covering hers. Her skin was warm, a stark contrast to the cold paper of the past. "She loved him," Elias said softly. "That wasn't for nothing. The waiting, the hope. It kept her alive." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes searching his. "Does it matter? If the ending is tragic?" "The ending isn't the whole story," Elias said. "The story is the middle. It's the part where they hoped." For a moment, the air was suspended. Elias felt a magnetic pull, a desire to wipe the tear from her cheek, to tell her that he had spent his life fixing machines, but for the first time, he didn't care what time it was. Sarah pulled back slightly, breaking the spell. "We should find out what happened to Eleanor afterwards." They found that Eleanor never married. She became a patron of the arts, traveled to Italy, and lived to be 84. She lived a full life, even if it wasn't the one she had planned. But the mystery of the clock remained. Why had she never fixed it? Why leave the note inside? Elias finished the repairs on the grandfather clock a week later. The gears meshed perfectly. The pendulum swung with a steady, rhythmic tock, tock, tock. He called the owner to arrange delivery, but his mind was on Sarah. Since the night in the basement, things had been awkward. They had solved the mystery, and with it, the excuse to see each other every day had evaporated. He missed her. He missed the way she chewed her lip when she was reading old handwriting. He missed her laugh, which sounded like a sudden downpour on a tin roof, startling and wonderful. He realized then that he was doing exactly what Eleanor had done. He was waiting. He was letting time pass, hoping for a different outcome without taking action. He grabbed his coat and the original note from the clock. He flipped the sign on his door to closed, though it was only 2 p.m. Part 5. The Echo. He found her in the library, shelving books in the fiction section. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, her eyes widening slightly. "Elias, did we miss a document?" "No," Elias said, stopping a few feet from her. "The story is finished. Eleanor lived. Arthur died. The clock is fixed." "Oh." She looked down at the book in her hands. "That's good, I guess. I came to tell you I was wrong," Elias said. Sarah looked up, confused. "Wrong about what?" "I told you the ending doesn't matter. That only the middle counts." Elias stepped closer. "But I was wrong. The ending matters because it's where we have to live." Eleanor lived in the past. She kept that note in the clock because she didn't want to move forward. He held out the note to Sarah. "I don't want to live in the past, Sarah. I don't want to analyze a love story that's already over. I want to start a new one." Sarah stared at him, the book forgotten in her hands. The library was silent around them, the air thick with the smell of paper and rain. "Are you asking me out?" she asked, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm asking you to help me with a new project," Elias said. "What kind of project?" "I have a lot of clocks in my shop," Elias said, "and I have a lot of time, but I have no one to share the seconds with. I was hoping maybe you'd like to waste some time with me." Sarah laughed, that sound he had missed so desperately. She stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "I'm very particular about how I spend my time, Mr. Thorne," she said softly. "I promise," Elias said. "I'll make every second count." He didn't kiss her, then that would be rushing. Instead, he offered her his arm. She took it. They walked out of the library, into the rainy afternoon. Back in the shop, the grandfather clock chimed 3 times. It was a loud, resonant sound, a declaration that time was moving forward. But for the first time in his life, Elias Thorne didn't mind. He wasn't watching the clock anymore. He was watching her. Years later, the shop was still there, though it had expanded to include a section for rare books. In the back, on a shelf above the workbench, sat a small wooden box. Inside was a yellowed note from 1916, and right next to it, a newer note, written on library stationery. "To the one who fixes my heart. I didn't break it, you just opened it. Don't worry about the time. We have enough. S. October 2024. The clocks ticked on thousands of tiny heartbeats in the dark, but Elias and Sarah never counted them again. They simply lived them. If you enjoyed this story, remember that time is the one currency we can never earn back, so spend it on the people who make your clock stop. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the heart.